The next step is going to be to paint the canvas now with some exterior porch paint. I could use other types of paint, but the porch paint and porch and patio paint is likely to be more scuff resistant. So since this will get stepped on and banged around, I want to use something that's going to be pretty strong. So the purpose of the paint is multi-fold. One, it will fill in some of the holes that's still in the canvas, and that will help make it stronger. Also, it will increase the waterproofness of this. The glue that I used here is known as water resistant, but by covering it up with other layers of latex paint, it won't get wet, and then that won't be a big issue. And then of course, I want this to look nice, and right now it looks like fabric. I'm hoping that by putting on multiple layers and then sanding it down, that I'll be able to get a nice glossy finish. So I'm in the bathroom today because it's the only room in the house that has ventilation. And this stuff is not so great to breathe, so I also have a respirator, and I got some eye protection. So I'm going to be applying this using just a simple foam roller, which is now covered in lint from the floor. But I'm just going to use the foam roller, roll it on. It takes about an hour for it to be dry to the touch, so then I'll be able to flip it over and roll on the other side, hopefully. So here's the paint on one of the sides after it's dried. This side actually looks pretty nice. It's a nice even looking paint job. You can still very clearly see the fabric underneath the paint, but it looks pretty decent. On the other side, it did not come out as nice. I don't know if this is going to show up on the camera, but it's got more bumps and ridges. One possibility is that I used too much paint and so it got or too much glue perhaps, or too much paint and it got bumps, or maybe it was just a rougher surface to start with underneath. So I'm hoping that even on this side, I'll be able to smooth it out by putting more coats on. So the next couple steps, and I'm probably not going to film these, is to just add more coats of paint and see what happens, see if I can get rid of the cloth look here. And at some point in time, I may end up actually sanding it and applying more paint. So we'll see how much of that I take video of. I have a feeling a lot of it's going to be very repetitive and pretty boring. So yeah, so we'll see you soon with even more paint on this. One thing that I've noticed, so one last thing that I've noticed is when I put this up on the ridge here, even with no weight on it, it'll tend to curve a little bit over time just from its own weight pulling it down. So it'll be interesting to see how much that remains once I put on more paint. That will definitely affect some of the ways I design things though, if even under its own weight it has a tendency to bend. I've painted and sanded this a few times now, and it's starting to look pretty good. I'll continue to experiment with it to see if I can get an even better finish, but I've learned enough about the materials that I'm confident moving forward on the project. In fact, I've already ordered the foam. So now that this has all the paint and the glue and everything, it's definitely far stiffer than it was when I first started this project. I'm sure I could still snap this thing in half, but it's definitely a lot better than it was at the beginning. So when I do the process for the actual boat, there's a few things I'm going to do different. One is I'm going to try to get better penetration of the glue through the fabric, and I'm hoping that will make it stiffer. And then also I may end up doing multiple coats of canvas on the bottom of the boat to increase both the stiffness and the strength. So by stiffness, I mean its resistance to flexing, and by strength, I mean its ability to take an impact without breaking. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.